This week on The Record, Governor Mike Kehoe signs a crime bill into law seizing state control over the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. A new era at the old courthouse downtown. The fight for control of City Hall. Meet the candidates running in South City's 3rd Ward, incumbent Alderman Shane Cohn and challenger Dallas Adams are on the record. And The Record goes on the road. Looming cuts to the federal budget, complex challenges facing Illinois' healthcare and education systems, and the potential ripple effects on local communities. We go one-on-one with Assistant House Majority Leader Jay Hoffman. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Federal choices in Washington could threaten Illinois' future. That's the dark picture a top House Democrat painted in an exclusive interview from the Illinois State Capitol. And the halls of Springfield were buzzing this week with uncertainty when we visited. As the Trump administration contemplates sweeping federal funding cuts, Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman said Illinois stands on the precipice of potentially devastating economic and social challenges. The legislature is facing down a gauntlet over the next several weeks.
Yeah.
And does the state legislature even know yet how to size up the impact of any federal funding cuts or freezes that might impact people in Illinois?
Well, that's really problematic. Every day there's something new coming out of Washington, different cuts that are being made. Just the other day, they're closing down the Department of Education. Trying. We'll see what the courts say. And I mean, all this is being done with Elon Musk holding a chainsaw and saying we're going to cut, and we're going to cut regardless of the consequences.
Where the funding is going to come from, how does that complicate your job?
Well, the uncertainty is heightened every day, day after day. We don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid, which is funding from the federal government that matches state funding for some of the individuals who don't have health insurance here in Illinois.
We know what they want to do with Medicaid.
Well,
they want to add work requirements.
Yeah, and if
what would that impact be?
Well, first of all, some people aren't able to work, but let me tell you the impact it's going to have. Let's put aside the impact on the individuals, which is profound. The impact it's going to have on hospitals, whether you're a critical care hospital, whether you're a safety net hospital, which means you're in some of the poorest areas of the state and serving some of the poorest areas of the state, whether you're rural hospitals. One of the things that just boggles my mind is that certain members of the other party who either go to Congress or represent folks here, they have in their districts the highest per capita Medicaid population in all the state. Yet they go around and they say, well, why is my rural hospital possibly closing? Well, it's closing because you're not standing up. You're not standing up to Trump. You're not saying to him, this is going to have a profound impact on rural health care. This is going to have a profound impact on some of the poorest, the hospitals that serve some of the poorest individuals in the state.
Last year's budget, you guys agreed to spend $50 million at the state level funding after-school programs. 10 months after that budget was signed into law, not a dime has been spent. What's the holdup?
Well, that's my understanding. I'm not going to point fingers. I don't know if the holdup is with the governor's office or the holdup is with the legislature not giving correct guidance to the governor's office. Either way, it's got to be fixed. Too many folks are relying on that funding. If we don't get it out the door, which we probably won't before the end of May, we should reappropriate that money and make sure that it's available next year.
Well, the governor's proposed budget slashes it to zero.
Well, we can reappropriate this year's.
So you think it could be possible that money could just be carried over, kind of like rollover minutes. You didn't spend it last year, you can spend it again this year.
Exactly, yes.
The Department of Education provides financial support for school districts that are in some of the poorest neighborhoods in the country. If the Department of Education goes away and those programs are somehow diminished, is that a rainy day, rainy enough to crack open that fund and start looking at the education formula?
It may have to be. It may have to be such a way that we use some of our reserves. First of all, education and the funding of education, and properly funding of education, is something that over the last 7 years, because the evidence-based formula that we put into place has been a top priority, and we've even put more money than was required in an evidence-based formula here in Illinois. We need to make sure our education, secondary, primary, as well as higher education, is properly funded in Illinois. It concerns me sitting here today with 2 months to go before we have to pass a budget here in Illinois by the end of May, we don't know what's going to happen federally. We don't know what funding they're going to provide for education, funding for some of the poorer areas. We don't know what funding is going to be provided to research institutions and higher education. It's all up in the air, all because of what is coming out of Washington, which it's unacceptable. It's puts us in a position where it's very difficult for us to do what's right for the people of Illinois. It's not only Illinois, it's not only blue states, it's red states as well. Not to mention the effect that some of these actions have had on our agricultural community, whether it's the tariffs and the proposed tariffs that go in one day and are out 48 hours later. You don't know how to plan. You need to know how to plan if you're a business. You need to know how to plan if you're a government. You need to know how to plan if you're a farmer. And our biggest industry here in Illinois is agriculture.
Could Governor Pritzker deliver on his promise to offer 4-year degrees at community college? Jay Hoffman answers that question and much more on KSDK.com. And stay tuned for an expanded version of this episode tomorrow on 5+. We're back with a lot more in just a moment. St. Louis voters no longer have local control over their police department. Wednesday, incoming Republican Governor Mike Kehoe signed his crime omnibus bill into law. It includes a state takeover of the police department and unfunded mandates that require the city to spend a quarter of its entire budget on police.
A big piece of the bill is the St. Louis piece. So we will have 30 days to appoint a transition director after the bill signing today, and then I believe it's 90 days to assemble that 5-person board and the 6th ex officio member that will be on there. Obviously, the mayor will be one of those 5.
St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones slamming Kehoe's takeover as a sham, writing in a statement that Governor Kehoe and the legislature are willing to throw out facts, reason, and the will of the people in order to give the safety of our city away to special interests. Mayor Jones faces the voters herself 1 week from Tuesday. Her challenger, Kara Spencer, continues to lead in fundraising after a dominant showing in the primary, outperforming the incumbent mayor by 35 points. We'll have continuing coverage of that race and local ward races as the fight for control of City Hall and the city's future hangs in the balance. We hear from 2 candidates running in a close ward race in South City after this. Control of City Hall could come down to South City. That's where a close primary contest in Ward 3 is heating up as early voting begins. Just last month in that primary, incumbent Alderman Shane Cohn won approval from 56% of the voters there, followed closely by 42% who approved of his top challenger. Dallas Adams is running for a seat on the Board of Aldermen, and she joins us now on the record. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
If Dallas Adams becomes a member of the Board of Aldermen,
yeah,
who would be your allies there? Who would you be most aligned with?
You know, I think one of my greatest superpowers as a strong communicator is to be able to find common threads among all people. I look forward to being able to sit on that seat and work with the other 13, 14, including the president of the Board of Aldermen, to be able to affect city change that the entire city of St. Louis is looking forward to, and the residents of the 3rd Ward are absolutely looking forward to.
It was one of the only wards in the entire city that drew interest from enough challengers to have a full-throated primary process. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the rhetoric in the primary was very progressive, I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
When you look at this, 60% of the people that came out still said they wanted to see change at the mayor's office in that race. Do you hope to ride that wave of change in South City?
You know, I think that's very interesting. I think we see races across the entire country that have an anti-incumbent sentiment. But what I try to focus on is the fact that there were 3 strong challengers in this race that really believe in working for the people. And the reason why I entered this race is because 16 years is too long for any one vision to be able to sustain. And being a community member, an active community member, being a mother to a 5-year-old, being a homeowner, I want to see the types of changes that need to occur across the city of St. Louis. And I believe that I have the experience to do that, but I do not plan on riding the coattails of anybody's race. I'm looking forward to focusing on the 3rd Ward.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So for our viewers who may not know, you're referring to 16 years. That's the experience that the incumbent Shane Cohn has dating back to before the Slade administration, during the Slade administration there. But when you said you don't plan to ride the coattails, that sounded to me like you're saying you're not going to be endorsing or jumping into or taking sides in the mayor's race. Did I read you correctly?
There's absolutely no way I can take a side in that race. I am fighting for my life to be able to represent the 3rd Ward, and it is a tight one.
So if you were to get elected,
How would your votes, how would your stances differ from what we've come to know with Shane Cohn? What would be different about you?
Well, I think the very first thing that we can expect and what I look forward to being able to do is taking a firm yes or no stance. In the last session of the Board of Aldermen, Alderman Cohn took 84% yes or no votes. Many of them
taking that present vote.
Sometimes taking that present vote, especially in very pivotal conversations, especially when it relates to the third ward, one of those present votes being against renters. Knowing that our ward is made of 80% renters, I look forward to being able to take principled stands that bring effective change to the people of the third ward first and foremost over any other special interest.
You worked at the Project Greenway or the Greenway.
Great Rivers Greenway, yes.
Thank you. How would that experience shape your input on the way the city might spend its share of the Rams money, if at all?
You know, I have not considered Great Rivers Greenway as a beneficiary of the Ram settlement dollars because they are a governing tax district, and I learned so much being at the Greenways. One of the most important things that I learned, though, is the importance of transparent government that involves everyone. Community engagement is at the helm of everything that we would do at the Great Rivers Greenway, that they continue to do, that I hope to be able to spur throughout the city of St. Louis. When people are left behind, it's hard to be able to make those decisions.
I suppose, when it comes to transit, pedestrians,
Thank you.
Those sorts of things. Is there a connection? And do you think that the current Rams proposals that we've seen floated, how would you change them, if at all?
Great question. So when it comes to transit, I believe, St. Louis can be a world-class city, but a world-class city needs to be able to prioritize alternative forms of transit. And so in that way, I absolutely support the work that the Greenways are doing. When it comes to the Ram settlement and thinking about it, we did as a city, I participated in a very robust community engagement process, and I'd like to see city leaders and bringing myself to the table here to prioritize the things that we heard. Infrastructure needs to be invested in. For me, I would want to see a proposal that specifically names out the parts of Southeast City that are rivaling in demographic and in crumbling infrastructure in some parts of the north side, and being able to secure and stabilize the city of St. Louis first and foremost.
Some of your campaign literature talks about public safety.
Yes.
When it comes to public safety, is there something that the city is doing now that it should stop doing?
I think what the city should stop doing now is relying solely on old tactics. I think that we do have to infuse what we know about public safety and be able to uplift the things about public safety we never really think about. When people hear public safety, the immediate first thought is police. Public safety is lighting. Public safety is traffic. Public safety is affordable housing. Public safety is taking care of our schools. Public safety is making sure our neighborhoods are strong. And so I think in order to solve our public safety issue, it has to be a much more nuanced conversation, and we need to be able to prioritize that in our budget.
All right, Dallas Adams running for Alderwoman in the 3rd Ward. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me.
Also joining us in studio, 3rd Ward incumbent Alderman Shane Cohn. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here, Mark.
What's at stake in this ward, in this race?
I've worked really hard the last several years in bringing affordable housing to our neighborhood, helping to improve outcomes for young people in our community, recruiting resources, and for example, Jean Slade Boys and Girls Club opened up a new campus in the neighborhood, helping to create opportunities for those young people and bringing more people and resources into our community. We recently broke ground on the expansion of a healthcare facility in the neighborhood as well. So continuing that vision and bringing access and resources for folks in our community is really important to me, and continuing that moving forward.
Yours was one of only 2 wards to have enough candidates running to have a primary race. So we have a little bit of data to show how popular you are in the ward. Now, Ward 3, for whatever reason, sometimes has a little bit lower voter turnout than we'd like to see, but still 56% of the ward that came out to vote approved of your time so far. 42% for your nearest challenger, who is now facing you. What do you make of that distinction, especially in a moment when so much of the city, so much of your ward seems to want change when you look at the mayor's race?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the hard work and dedication that I've put in representing a very diverse constituency in the 3rd Ward. And I listen to people and I try to learn. Even when I have disagreements, I'll still sit down at a table or have an open door policy and have those conversations. But at the end of the day, I also try to focus on making sure that city government works for the residents of the 3rd Ward, and I fight for those resources.
Is it working?
I'd like to think so. There's still challenges at a very macro level, not just from a city perspective, but also a region, state, and certainly national, that bring challenges. And I think that that's where my experience in particular is valuable. I've lived through and worked through these types of challenges before in the past. We have the governor is, signing local control or, takeover of state control of our police department. I've been through similar exercises in the past and have the experience to lead through these changes and hopefully be able to influence things for a positive outcome for our residents.
Yeah, with the retirement of Joe Vollmer, you're increasingly becoming one of the most senior members of the Board of Aldermen, and you were there back when the board was under state control. Does that bring some tangible benefit? Because I don't know what that would look like from an alderman. The mayor would have a seat on the board. How would you affect any change there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are going to be happening in the next year. So the law that was passed in Jefferson City allows for a transition to the state board. I had experience working with a previous board of commissioners, police commissioners. The mayor, very similarly, was an ex officio member of the board. And we had citizen appointees and had to work through, various processes, whether that was accountability for, officers, the creation of a citizen oversight review board, and things of that nature. But also thinking about things like police funding, pay increases, things of that nature. How the department's going to function, even. The police department had its own personnel department beforehand, and so there's a lot of different things that are going to be in play in the next year or so that are going to be critical to our city.
What would an Alderman Shane Cohn and his influence look like under a Kara Spencer administration? What would that relationship look like?
I prefer to focus on my own race and my own ward and representing the interests of my constituents. But
you see where the dynamics of this race stand, and
yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I've worked with Kara for several years now. I have a good working relationship with her. I was just on the phone with her yesterday, clearing up some misunderstandings between the two of us, and I've told her that if she were to win, I'd be, willing to work with her administration. I think it's important that, whether it's Mayor Jones or Alderwoman Spencer, we do have a shared mutual interest in the betterment of our city and a love for our city, and so I share that with both of them, and I'll be happy to work with whoever wins the mayor's race.
All right, if we had to boil it down to a single word that draws a distinction between you and your challenger on April 8th, what would that be?
Experience.
There it is. Alderman Shane Cohn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're back in a moment.
It's the dawn of a new day at the old courthouse. That emerald dome, an iconic fixture in the St. Louis skyline, will soon allow visitors to return inside. And underneath, its majestic renovated columns inviting tourists to walk under the same restored roof as Dred and Harriet Scott once did, to learn the lessons of survival and struggle that they endured. The grand reopening scheduled for Saturday, May 3rd. And as we close out the month of March, Women's History Month, let's check the record. Under the dome in the Illinois State Capitol, which happens to be the tallest at any state capitol in the nation, you'll find some towering figures of history. Trailblazers in their own right who showed courage and leadership when their chapter of history was first being written. But few of those men ever knew the courage of Lottie Holman O'Neill. After all, they never had to break down the barriers she did. Back in 1878, it was very much a man's world. Thomas Edison was just winning patents on his early phonograph the year O'Neill was born, and by the year she arrived in Springfield, 1922, the first radio stations were just starting to crackle over the air. Despite these significant hurdles in getting her message out to the masses, Lottie O'Neill, a mother and suffragist, became a force of political will and forged a movement that the state had never seen before. She had just cleared other hurdles in the law, too. Just 2 years before she got elected, American women weren't even allowed to vote. That quickly, she shattered the glass ceiling, becoming the first woman ever elected to the Illinois House of Representatives. On her inauguration, she rode a train alongside 1,000 women to the state capitol, a stunning feat only possible because of what she inspired and what she represented. In fact, when she got there, they had to build a new bathroom because before, they just didn't need one for women. She got a lot done there, too, championing education, welfare reforms, making room for women to serve on juries. She wasn't just making history herself, she was making a difference for others. And she did it for 40 years, a record streak of longevity when she retired. Lottie Holman O'Neill proved women belong in the halls of power. Her legacy, leaving a blueprint for future generations of female leaders, and a reminder that progress is always possible when you have enough people in your corner speaking up, demanding to be heard. And now, a century later, St. Louis voters head to the polls just next week.
with 2 women running for mayor. Those are the 2 choices for you. And a lot of other ward races. Perhaps we'll have some of those other candidates running across the city in with us that last Sunday before voters go to the polls. That does it for us this week. Until the same time next week, we're off the record.